So when we're thinking about soul retrieval, how would a person know if they had holes in their silver orb?
Whatever lost soul part or parts are not only ready and willing to be returned to my client, but the one or ones that will most significantly improve their healing.
Whether you're looking for inspiration, guidance, or simply a moment of reflection, you're in the right place. This is Wisdom Stripes. Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to take a moment to share something important. The views expressed by my guests are their own, and they may not necessarily reflect mine or those of this platform. My intention with every episode is to create a space where we can explore diverse perspectives, life experiences, and belief systems together. I truly believe that wisdom lives everywhere, and often we find it in the places we least expect, especially in those whose experiences and beliefs are very different from our own. Not every episode will challenge you, but some might, and that's okay. Growth often comes when we allow ourselves to step into discomfort and see the world through someone else's eyes. I also want to share something I heard recently from Oprah Winfrey that really struck a chord with me. She said at a commencement speech, "People all want to know one thing. Was that okay? Did you hear me? Do you see me? Did what I say mean anything to you?" My hope is that you will try to go out and have more face-to-face conversations with people you may disagree with, that you'll have the courage to look others in the eye and hear their point of view, and help make sure that the speed and distance and anonymity of our world doesn't cause us to lose our ability to stand in somebody else's shoes and recognize all that we share as a people. There has to be some way that this darkness can be banished with light. I couldn't agree more with those sentiments spoken by Oprah. These dialogues aren't always easy, but they are so important. My hope is that this episode and all the episodes I share will inspire you to listen a little more closely, reflect a little more deeply, and keep showing up for the conversations that matter most. Thank you for being here with me. It means so much to me that you're part of this journey. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to Wisdom Stripes. My name is Meg Tuohey, and today's episode is all about healing, spiritual wisdom, and how to navigate life's darkest moments with the support of the divine. Our guest today is Robin Cathleen, a licensed psychotherapist, shamanic healer, teacher, and medium, whose path has been nothing short of transformative. Robin's healing work combines clairvoyance, deep sensitivity, and compassionate insight. She's dedicated over 20 years to helping others through her practice in Santa Fe, offering shamanic and energy healing, counseling, and remote healing to clients across the globe. Robin's journey into shamanism was not an easy one. She battled dark forces, faced immense personal grief, and survived near-death experiences. However, it was these very challenges that helped her unlock her power and claim her gifts. Robin has studied with renowned teachers like Michael Hana and Sandra Ingerman, and her ancestral gifts were transmitted to her by her grandmother. Alongside her work as a healer, Robin has written for her 2 blogs, one focused on channeled writing and another on food and cooking. Today, we'll explore Robin's path to shamanic healing, the wisdom she's gained from her personal journey, and the teaching she's ready to share about staying grounded during turbulent times. I'm thrilled to welcome Robin to today's episode. This is Wisdom Stripes, your no-nonsense, fierce fairy godparents, helping you turn pain into power and bringing spiritual clarity in the face of life's greatest challenges. Robin, we always start with the same question for our guests. What wisdom would you like a listener to come away with today?
First of all, thank you, Meg, for such a warm welcome, and I'm happy to be here with you.
Me too, with you.
So the wisdom that I wish to impart to your listeners today is that you're going to be okay. Everything is going to be better than you can possibly imagine, and that you're not alone. And, we're living in times that are very turbulent, very chaotic. There's a great deal of pain out there, and there's suffering, and so many people are being deeply affected by it all. And I've found that it's destabilizing for so many people. And there are a lot of things that we can do to help stabilize, but really we're not alone. This is part of a much bigger plan because we're living in the times that were prophesied by the ancient ones thousands and thousands of years ago. It's all divinely ordained.
That does sound very soothing. And I wonder if you could share with us how you have come to understand that so deeply, that it's your wisdom to share today.
I had to learn the hard way by being knocked around, and I didn't choose this path, but I began by starting to see spirits when I was working in the political field. And I had a lot of challenges, but when beings began appearing before me, it was greatly comforting to know that, wow, there are angels here around me and I can see them and they're on my side. They're working for me. Ancestors are coming in and speaking to me, ascended masters. And it's not just me, it's every single one on the planet has guardian angels, has beings, helping spirits, ancestral spirits. So we are not alone. I don't know if that really answers your question, if you want me to go more into that.
I feel like it's a good start and we'll continue on. Yeah. Robin, your work in shamanism is something that I think many people somewhat understand, but I feel like what might be a lovely thing to do is just to describe what the work of a shaman is and how perhaps it does happen.
Well, shamanism is the most ancient form of spiritual healing on the planet. And I really didn't choose it. I never thought I would want to do this work. I was in politics for 16 and a half years in California, but it was the adventure and the path of beginning to see spirits, and that I found my way to shamanism, and it felt like home for me. So shamans work in an altered state of consciousness to bring in power, healing, information, guidance to individuals. And they work through using drums, rattles, and didgeridoos, because what scientists now understand about shamans and what they've done is they access altered states of consciousness through the steady sound of a percussion instrument, because it takes the brainwaves from alpha into theta state of consciousness. And when I work, I tell my clients, I come from a place that I don't know anything. My only goal is to be a clear and open channel for divine healing. So I'm opening myself up, I'm listening, and I'm working with my guides, my spirits, and they're telling me what to do. It's not my agenda. And so, shamanism is ancient, and it's about listening. It's about being a conduit or a vehicle for this very sacred work that's healing. And shamanism is all about wholeness. It's about bringing people into balance and wholeness. So you asked what I do. There are some main components of shamanism, main healing modalities. One of them is soul retrieval. Another is bringing more power to people. It could be extraction. It could be ancestral healing. It could be healing a past life. It could be just about anything.
I feel like let's talk about maybe each one of those modalities, because when you say them fast, it's like, oh yes, but actually they're all quite different. So let's go through them.
So power from a shamanic perspective has nothing to do with aggression or domination as we tend to think of in the Western world. It's an absolute healing modality, and we can never have enough power from a shamanic standpoint because it's healing. And just as in Christian and Judaic religions, there's a belief that we're all born with guardian angels, and I do believe that, and I work with the angelic ones. But shamans believe that every individual who is born on this planet is born with a guardian or a guide, but it comes from something from the nature kingdom. It could be a four-legged, a winged one, or a being of the waters. So from a shamanic perspective, Meg, you already have power, you wouldn't be alive. But most everyone can benefit from having additional power because it's like an invisible best friend, but a guardian, a guide, someone with a lot of wisdom and something to offer. I find that there's more magic and miracles and synchronicities with a power retrieval than with anything else that I do. So it's when I do a power retrieval for someone, I'm not making the choice or the selection. And I don't say, well, this is a really lovely wildebeest or giraffe, and I'm going to bring this back. No, the spirit reads the client's heart before the client even steps through the door and knows exactly what he or she needs. And my job is to locate it, have a dialogue with it, and bring it back. So when someone is trying to accomplish something new or heal from something, an accident or an illness, or leave something behind, a bad relationship or divorce, a power retrieval is a very desirable healing modality.
And so the outcome is the client is united with an etheric version of the animal, is it?
It's not always an animal. It can be a winged one. It could be a being of the waters. It could be a two-legged. It could be a being from the angelic kingdom. I've brought in Archangel Michael when someone's needed a lot of protection. It could be any one of the gods or goddesses, a deity from any religious background. It could be an ancestor, a great one who's passed. And they are all real and alive and in compassionate, benevolent service to humankind.
And so you connect through, I guess, some form of meditation?
Not a meditation. It's much more active. I think of meditation as being very quiet, where shamanic journeying and shamanism is very active. So I will use my rattle and sometimes a drum, but oftentimes a healing rattle, and I'll just rattle, and immediately I'm taken into an altered state of consciousness. I go into a different reality. So shamans believe there's 3 distinct worlds. We're in what would be called the middle world. And there's the lower world, which has nothing to do with hell or damnation. It's just a place underneath the earth where the power allies are located, the animals, the winged ones, the beings of the waters. And it looks very much like Earth. And then there's the upper world where you find the ancestors and the angels, the gods and goddesses, great ones who've passed. So I use my rattle, and immediately I'm in that altered state of consciousness, and I'm locating the power ally that's already chosen my client.
Do you see yourself climbing a staircase or dropping down a lift? How do you know where you are?
But in the beginning, when I teach shamanism, I would teach that because it's helpful for people to have a visual, to go down through an entry into the earth to find lower world, or fly up and cross through a permeable membrane to find the upper world. But for me, it's pretty instant, and I know where I am, and I easily identify the ally.
All right. Let's imagine you have a client, you're doing a power retrieval, you shut your eyes, you shake your rattle, and in doing so, do you immediately find yourself above or below?
Just like I'm there.
You're right there.
I'm there.
And so therefore you understand you're getting someone from the above or you're getting someone from the below. Yeah. And then how do you know, out of all the infinite possibilities of the beings that are above and below, which one is the one you're looking for?
I don't look for them. They show up for me.
They come
because
forward.
The intention is to find the power ally for my client. And I'm led to that being. That being shows up. So I might be taken into a jungle or a savanna or to the ocean. I might be taken to the upper world, and I'll know right away.
And so they sort of walk towards you and arrive.
Yeah, they do arrive.
And then there's no confusion because there's no other beings in sight.
Oh, sometimes there are, and I always tune into my own guides and check and double check, is that really my client's power ally? And then I begin a dialogue, and I ask that being, after identifying with it, what kind of power do you bring to my client? And I repeat it verbatim to the client. I don't filter through the words. And then I ask if that being wants to be honored in any particular way, because in the honoring, a lot of times the client receives a transmission from that being. For example, to buy a fetish, or to watch a video of how the being moves in nature, or to put up a picture on the screensaver. All of these are examples.
Okay, so then you've identified the connection, and then with the client and the being connect.
Well, I blow the being into the client's crown of the head. So I hold a crystal that's about this big, and that ally, whoever it is, whatever it is, comes into the crystal, and I move over to the client who's lying down on a massage table. I place the crystal on the top of the head, and I blow through like that. And most every client feels the energy, and I can also see how their aura expands by several feet once the power ally is blown into the body. Yeah. And as I said, most clients feel it. They feel either a warmth or an expansion, a whoosh. Yeah.
I wish.
Yeah. And I kid you not when I say I see more magic and miracles and synchronicities occur with a power retrieval than with anything else. And even when I began this practice, it was mind bending. They're magical and they're alive and real.
And available.
Yes, absolutely.
And wanting to partner and connect. Wanting to be of service.
Yeah. And along that lines, I want to say everyone has guardian angels. And the angels are at our disposal 24/7, but we have to ask. So I want to encourage all the listeners to not hesitate to ask for what you need, for support, for help, for assistance from your angels, because it's like they're standing at your front door and they're just waiting for you to open up and let them in. So it's very important to ask. And the asking is implied when a client comes to me for help, because they're asking and giving me permission to find a new ally for them.
Does that feel complete for the power retrieval?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go to our next modality. Which one would you like to do?
Yeah. And I was going to say, unless you wanted to hear stories, and I'm going to certainly tell stories
Yes,
when I
of course
teach
we do.
About the magic. And
yes.
Okay. There was a client several years ago who came to me, and she happened to be in her mid-50s. She was divorced. She lived on a ranch and raised 4 children on her own. It was not an easy life, and she never remarried. And when I did the power retrieval, immediately I was taken. Right away in the lower world, I saw a Native American spirit, and he told me that he had been married to her in a past incarnation, and they had great love together, and that one of his gifts to her was to fill in the empty spaces in her heart and to be with her for the rest of her days on earth so she wouldn't be lonely. That was his power to give to her. But the interesting thing is he told me his name was Greyhawk. And I originally came from California. I didn't know much about birds. And so I asked him, and this was sort of in the early days of my practice, and I asked him, I said, but aren't all hawks brown? He looked at me like, you stupid girl. I'm not going to even answer. I was, a city girl. I didn't know anything about hawks. And he just said his name was Greyhawk, and that he brought her a sign or sent her a sign that he was coming. And then I asked him again, but aren't all hawks brown? And he looked at me and he wouldn't answer. I asked him a total of 3 times. He never responded. And it's mind-bending sometimes when you think something's just impossible. So I ended up blowing Greyhawk, this Native American, into my clients in the crown of her head. And she told me that 3 days before her appointment, one of her dogs brought a dead Greyhawk, perfectly intact, and laid it on her front doorstep. And the dog did not tear apart any of the feathers, so she knew it was sacred. And she gave it to a Native American friend. But that's the kind of magic and synchronicity I see all the time, truly. Yeah.
That is magical. Absolutely.
And I see it a lot. It's mind-bending, things you can't possibly imagine.
Thank you. So when we're thinking about soul retrieval, how would a person know if they had holes in their silver orb? How would they know what that was if that's something we don't talk about?
Yeah, good question. Well, there's some classic symptoms of soul retrieval. One of them is addiction. And in my worldview, addiction is nothing more than the body's innate wisdom of saying, I'm missing something inside. I've even had clients telling me, I feel like there's a hole inside of me. And so people are reaching for the wrong things, whether it's smoking or alcohol or drugs, to try to fill up the empty spaces. And it's a temporary fix, but it's not lasting. So addiction is a common symptom. Depression, even suicidal ideation, is an indicator of soul loss. Blank spots in one's memory bank. A lot of my clients don't remember their childhood or big segments out of their life. And that's the body's wisdom of saying, whoa, this time period in my life is way too painful. I'm going to erase it, and erase it they do. So that's a red flag that there's soul loss. People who tell me they haven't felt the same sense, and there's certain markers in their history, haven't felt the same since grandma died or since my accident. And then finally, disassociation. And I feel like disassociation occurs very early on in children when there's an abusive environment and children learn to disconnect. And it's almost as if their psyche saying, hey, it's safer out there in the clouds and daydreaming with the angels than it is in the body. So they learn to disconnect, disassociate, and come back in. And so I'll ask clients, you ever disassociation, I'll explain it like if you're having a conversation with a friend and you suddenly like go somewhere, and when you come back in, you realize you've missed part of the conversation. That's a disassociation. So those are all symptoms of soul loss. And it's not a common term in our culture. Most people don't think of soul loss, but it really is very much of an issue. And soul retrieval is absolutely healing.
So how do you retrieve a soul, and how do you know which of those Swiss cheese holes in that silver orb that you would replace? So imagine there's 12 holes. I imagine you can't do all 12 at once.
First of all, I never make the decision or determination. I don't even do an intake form. I like to fly blind, and my intention is to retrieve whatever lost soul part or parts are not only ready and willing to be returned to my client, but the one or ones that will most significantly improve their healing. So I leave it again. I tell my clients, I can only do what their body and their soul in conjunction with spirit allow me to do. So for example, if a client's had a very nasty divorce and if her marriage had a great deal of domestic violence, she might not be ready to hold those soul parts. So I might be taken to childhood soul parts. Again, I don't decide. It's between the client's soul and spirit. And again, I'm just the conduit. I do what spirit tells me to do. So I'm taken to the soul part. And when I find a soul part, I will know exactly how old that soul part is, why that individual soul part left. And then I work with the angels to give that soul part a healing. So it's important for my clients and for your listeners to know that when they get a soul part back, the soul part's completely healed and whole and also bringing a gift. So I will ask the soul part, why did you leave? And my guides know I don't want a lot of information as to why a soul part leaves, because so many of my clients have had a great deal of trauma. So I'll get enough information that might ignite in them a memory, and they'll know this. And usually they know, oh yeah, I know that exact year. And then I work with the angels, and I surround the soul part with the angelic ones. Sometimes gods and goddesses come in, sometimes ancestors, sometimes the fairies. Different beings. Sometimes the Madonna energy often comes in when it involves children or even an issue of mothering. And I hold the energy until the soul part's completely healed and whole. And then I ask the soul part what gift that soul part brings back to my client being reunited with her or him. And the soul part will tell me. And then I will ask how that soul part would like to be honored. So sometimes they really ask for very specific things, and I'll tell a story. Years ago, I did a remote soul retrieval, and the client was in Chicago area. And her soul part, I recall, was I think 12 years old. And she told me why she left. And it involved her mother. And I worked with healing her. And when I asked her, what would you like her to do to honor you as you come back? And she told me three things. First, she said, no one's ever asked me before what I want.
This is the soul part?
This is the soul part, 12-year-old soul part. And she says, no one's ever asked me before what I want. And she said, I want her to play the piano for me. Now, this was a first time I worked with this client, long distance by phone. Don't know anything about her because I don't ask the background. And I'm thinking in my head, oh, dear God, what if she doesn't know how to play the piano? I mean, if someone asked me to do that and I don't play, I would never be able to do it. And then she said, and I want her to roller skate. I'm like, oh my God. And I want her to eat strawberry ice cream for me. And I'm thinking, oh, how do I tell her all these things? But I've learned just tell what spirit says. So when I called her back to tell her about what spirit did, what the healing was for her. She said, well, you don't know me and you don't know this, but I'm a concert pianist and I would be very happy to play the piano. And she said, and I know exactly that moment about her mother yelling at her that she had soul loss. She said, roller skating was my favorite activity when I was a child, and I still own those roller skates. They're in my basement. And I said, please don't put them on. You'll kill yourself with those old ones. And I said, but maybe bring them out to honor them. And she said she loved ice cream, strawberry ice cream. So that's an example. Yeah.
I'm wondering, when the 12-year-old is talking with you and you're meeting them above or below, I imagine, do you see her in her physical incarnate, or does she look like the younger version of the client, or does she look or feel or present in a different way?
They usually look like a younger version of the client. So she looks like she's 12. Or if it's a 5-year-old, he or she will look like they're 5 years old.
So it's literal.
It's not like as crisp as the way that I can see you now, but it is apparent to me. It's visual.
Okay, so that's the second of the 4 modalities. What is the third one?
Extraction. Extraction is the removal of unwanted energy. And we all collect energy. Some of it's not ours. Simple energy would be taking on someone's, let's say a child comes in and wants, mom's depressed or angry, and most children want to heal their parents. Taking in that energy, of the parent, the anger or the depression. So an extraction might be removal of that. Also, extraction is unwanted energy in the form of anger. Someone's angry at you, and it can unconsciously form an object that goes into the body. Example, years ago, I had a client that was in my office, and we did the soul retrieval and power retrieval. And at the very end, I said, do you mind if I go into the neck right here, pull something out of the neck? And I did, and it was a small arrowhead. And it had come from her ex-husband, who was very angry with her. But this client happened to be a body worker, a very gifted one. And she put her hand on her neck and went, oh my God, I can move my neck. And she said, I have been to the chiropractor, been to the acupuncturist, I've had massage and biofeedback, and nothing was taking care of the pain that she felt in her neck. And as soon as that arrowhead was removed, the pain was gone. And that's kind of a hard thing to explain, but it's an invisible something that goes into the body, and it forms like a physical object, and it can cause illness, disease, inflammation, discomfort. I know it might be a stretch for the listeners to get that one, but it is reality. And at the extreme of extraction is a possessing influence. You can pick up what we call ghosts. There's ghosts walking around everywhere. I call them disincarnate human beings. And they can attach. And for various reasons, when someone dies, they don't always go to the light. Some of the reasons that they don't, maybe they have unfinished business. Maybe it's a mother who is dying of cancer and has 3 children and doesn't want to leave them behind. She may choose to stay earthbound because she wants to protect her children and see them grow. So, and then later she becomes a ghost. War, when people are killed in war, a lot of times they are earthbound. Murder, and sometimes even in suicide, you can find people that have missed that window of light and they remain earthbound, and then they can attach to people. I've seen that many times.
And what is your role when that happens?
Psychopomp, which would be both an extraction and psychopomp, to remove that being. And psychopomp comes from the Greek word, which means leader or guide of souls. And it's something that shamans do, is to make sure that when someone dies, they are actually moving into the light, going back home. But if a disincarnate human being attaches to someone, then my job is to send it off into the light.
To sort of help it get to the light.
So an example, and so when you have an attachment like that, it can alter someone's personality or it can cause shifts. And because there's an overlay of another human being inside that person. So many years ago, one of my regular clients came to me and told me that she had suddenly suicidal ideation, and she's also had a cold that she couldn't shake, and she'd been coughing for like 3 weeks to a month. And as soon as I looked at her, I could see that she had a possession. And we did the work, and I did it in a way that we dialogued with the being that was inside her. And it turned out it was a woman that committed suicide in San Francisco Bay. So she died by drowning. And when that woman found her way into my client, found her at a bookstore, thought, well, she looks like someone who can get me home or be a nice place to reside. And when she came into my client suddenly caught a terrible cold and coughed and coughed and coughed. And she was terribly depressed and had suicidal ideation. So did the Psychopomp work, released that being into the light. Immediately, client's suicidal ideation gone, and the cold cleared up in a couple of days.
That's quite a big story, isn't it?
And you see that. And I had another similar situation with a regular client she was a Reiki master, and she gave someone a session, and this man had suicidal ideation. And it was a being, and it was a different kind of, it wasn't a disincarnate human being. It was an entity, a dark force who jumped into my client. So suddenly my client has suicidal ideation, and it was a matter of removing that unwanted energy.
Hey there, Meg Tuohey here with a quick and exciting announcement. As a psychologist, coach, and founder of the Wisdom Lab, I've had the privilege of helping thousands of individuals break free from the vicious cycles holding them back and tap into their infinite inner wisdom. If you're tired of feeling unheard, unseen, and stuck in the same old struggles, the Wisdom Lab is the breakthrough you've been yearning for. This on-demand program guides you through a powerful process to shatter emotional barriers, overcome deep-rooted blocks, and experience the profound transformation you deserve. In just 4 hours, you'll gain the tools and insights to revolutionize your life from the inside out. Want to learn more? Click or tap the link in the show notes for all the details. Okay, now back to the episode. I'm wondering, when you take on a client, let's imagine that they're not virtual, let's imagine they're in person.
Mm-hmm.
How do you read that there is a being or of some description attached?
I see it.
How does it present?
Well, I close my eyes and I look at the aura, and it presents as their form, which is not always pretty. Yeah, so I can see it.
And so then you can see where in the body it's attached?
It's usually it's the entire body. It's like an overlay, and I'll see it in front of the client.
Okay.
And then I work to clear that energy.
And do you ever have a battle with that entity? Is the entity ever like, I don't think so, I'm quite happy here, thanks, Robin?
Yeah, they do struggle. And when they do, the client can feel the unrest. They get kind of jittery. But yeah. Yeah.
What is it that you can do to encourage the separation of the two? How do you actually separate the being from the person?
Again, I don't do the work. I call in all my allies. I work with ascended masters, angels, ancestors, nature spirits, the gods and goddesses, my power allies. I work with a very large group of light beings. I work with star beings. And so I ask all the beings that I work with to come in. And I may drum, I may rattle, and these other beings come in and remove the unwanted energy. It's, again, not my work. It's work of the divine. And it'd be much harder if I were doing it myself.
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's number 3. And there's a 4th one.
Did I say, okay, Psychopomp is one of them, and I already described that. Did. Psychopomp is making sure that people cross over. One of my clients, her grandmother died, and it was here in Santa Fe, and they were selling the grandmother's house, and the grandmother loved her home. She was meticulous, and she was a seamstress, and the housekeeper was cleaning before the new occupants were coming, and she called my client and said, she is still here in the house. So I was called to go out to the house, and I walked through the rooms, and the house was just beautiful. Everything was perfect. And I got into the master bedroom, and there she was. And so she was, I think old in her 80s or maybe 90 when she did pass. And I saw her and my job is to psychopomp her to get her to go into the light. So I am having a dialogue with her and I asked her, do you want to, her husband, I was told, had deceased prior to her. And I said, do you want to go and see your husband? And she said, no. I said, okay. She had a son who also died before she died. I said, do you want to go see your son? No. It's my job. I'm not going to just throw her somewhere. I want her to move, of her own volition. I asked her if she had any pets. She had a dog and she didn't care if she saw the dog again. And finally, I asked her if she wanted to go meet her parents again. And she said yes. So I brought in the angels and literally they lifted her up into the heavenly realms. And her granddaughter and the daughter were both in the room and they could feel the energy and they were both crying. So that's an example of psychopomp.
That's a beautiful example. Thank you for sharing that.
It was, and kind of a fun one that she didn't care to see her husband or her son again. And I also had another situation where I was called, and it was a man who died in a boating accident. And his family contacted me. And when I found his spirit, he was earthbound. He had not crossed over. And he was so angry because he did not want to die. He had unfinished business and he wanted to take care of. But that was a tough one. He had messages. He had 2 children and he had a message for each of them and for his wife. But ultimately, I was able to psychopomp him to move him beyond. So
I imagine it is somewhat peaceful for them to be psychopumped once they have left this heaven and once they've left earth and moved into heaven. It must feel better in those spaces than it does here.
I would imagine so.
I would imagine so. I mean, either one of us couldn't know, but it would seem that way. Switching gears slightly, you're no stranger to tragedy and trauma. Could you talk to us about how your own life, human experiences interact with your shamanism?
Yeah. So I think I've had a lot of loss in my life, and the grief has been almost like an initiation. And the biggest loss was the loss of my oldest son. He was killed by a drunk driver who was going the wrong way on Interstate 25 here in Santa Fe and hit him head on, at night. And he was trapped in his car. He was actually alive when the emergency responders came in, and she had a high degree of alcohol in her system and a tiny bit of cocaine, and she was killed instantly. And he was actually alive when the ER people came, and he was calling out, "Get me out, please." And he's waving his arms, "Please get me out." And they arrived at the scene and saw him, and they tried to extract him from his SUV, and his legs were pinned under the dashboard, and they had to break into the car. And when they did, and he was still alive and saying, "Get me out," but they heard a popping in the engine and they knew the engine was going to blow. And they had to move away from the car, and the engine did catch fire, and they watched him burn to death alive. And that was ultimately his death, was carbon monoxide poisoning, but he also had so many broken bones and fractured skull, heart. He had so many injuries he wouldn't have survived, but it was a very grisly death, highly publicized all over the papers, on the news. Even reporters came to my home at 7 a.m. after I learned at 4:30, and it was all over the television news too. And it was, I think, the biggest grief of my life. And if I hadn't experienced the level of grief that I have, I'd never be able to go to those depths with my clients. And I've had many other losses as well. But it's that depth that the human soul has to experience that allows me to meet my clients in their place of grief. And I have worked with many parents who have lost children and who've had other horrendous losses. So it's been quite a path. And I could say if I didn't have my ability to see, and my son has appeared to me many times and I've been able to speak with him, communicate with him. But if I didn't have my ability of sight and my incredible trust and faith in a higher power, I'd never have made it through that. And that goes back to my first word of wisdom to pass on, is that we aren't alone and everything will be okay. There is a higher power at work. And even though we may not always understand it, it's part of the great mystery of life, and that we may not understand certain things until we cross over. But if we have the faith and trust in a higher power, whatever that is for anyone. So shamanism is nothing to do with religion, and it doesn't replace religion. But for me, it's a trust and faith in a higher power, because I work with these divine beings and they've gotten me through the hardships.
Oh, that's a big conversation. And I imagine that there's almost nothing that a client could bring you that you couldn't meet. And that I think would make you an exceptional healer. But oh, what a price you paid for that healing. Prowess or strength that you have.
Yeah, I've had clients tell me before in the past, well, I want to share something and it's really horrendous, or it's really scary, or it's really crazy. And I said, there is nothing that is crazy in my universe, nothing that is too scary that you can't share with me.
There's something about the initiation of great loss and the knowing of how to walk through great loss. That is, I think, a deeply calming space for others to bring their burdens. Have you ever wondered why it's you that needed to do your work and pay that price?
Well, unfortunately, I was told I volunteered. And I wonder why.
I mean, which version of me volunteered to do this? Yes.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've been told is that I shine light into a lot of dark places. And that's why some of my work has been very challenging. The heavy lifting hasn't been easy.
No, it's not easy.
But it's tremendously gratifying.
Yes, it would be.
And we are at that place on the planet right now where so much more light is coming in, because this planet was ruled for eons by dark forces. And humankind was mostly asleep for eons, for thousands and thousands of years. And as I said earlier, we're living in the times that the ancients prophesied thousands and thousands of years ago. So even while the planet and this country seems to be in disarray, there's so much that is painful and difficult to process. It's part of a much greater plan that is moving humankind and this earth into the greatest evolutionary process that's ever before been seen in the history of the universe. And we're all here. We all signed up to be a part of it right now. And most people, it's hard to hold that as a positive viewpoint when there's so much suffering and so much turmoil going on.
I wonder, do you have access to the understanding of what lies on the other side of this great difficulty the collective human experience is having?
Yes, indeed. That's the exciting part.
Do you tell? God. Spill the beans.
Yeah. Well, first of all, our human beingness, we're undergoing grand change physiologically and mentally, emotionally. So we're getting all 12 strands of our DNA online. So when we were young, we were all told in school, you have 2 strands of DNA. The human body actually has 12 strands. 10 of them were deactivated eons ago. They're coming back online. Our brains are going to be expanding. We're going to have more telepathy. In the future, teleporting. There's going to be new technology that will be developed in the medical field that's going to allow for pretty instantaneous healings through frequency and color and sound. We're going to become much more community oriented and work together in communities as opposed to me. There's going to be more equality, more justice, more fairness. The financial system is going to be turned on its ear, and it's going to be redone in a way that is more fair for the entire planet. These are some of the things that are coming, but we're still in this mix where there's so much chaos and turmoil. And one of the principles of physics, which I don't know a lot about, but I do know this, is out of chaos comes order. So we will eventually reach that place, but we're in the thick of it right now.
What advice do you have for our listeners who are in the thick of it and are like, oh, that sounds really nice, Robin, but also it sounds like it's not going to happen in my lifetime. So how do I live in this chaos right now?
Well, I think it is going to happen in our lifetime, but it's slow. It began in 2012, and it should come to a culmination predicted around 2032. 2030 to 2032, we're going to start to see some significant changes. So we're in the turmoil right now, but what I tell my clients and what my guides have told me and that I've channeled and put on my blog post is several things. One, we have to do our emotional work. We have to do our trauma release work. So with all this light frequency, these are high frequencies, new codes, higher vibrations. They are streaming into our planet and into the human body. And what it's doing is bringing up all the dark shadow material to be revealed and healed. So everyone, and I'm seeing it in my clients, and I've even seeing it in my own life. Old shadow material, things that we thought we healed long ago. It's like, oh my God, that's coming back again. My issue with blank, blank, blank. Okay, it's all coming up. Just like if you have a pot that got burned and you put water in it and put it on the stove and all those brown bits start floating to the surface. That's what's happening for individuals. So people have to do their shadow work, meaning deal with your traumas. This is the time to heal because the light is bringing the shadow up to be healed. And the more we heal and release that, the more light we can take in our bodies, because we are changing from carbon-based human beings to crystalline human beings. It's changing our entire structure as human beings. More light's coming in, greater capacity. So, number one, do your trauma work. Do your work. Seek out a healer to help you clean the house, clean it. Get lots of good, clean, organic food if you can. Eat well, clean water. Be out in nature as much as possible. I talked earlier about how these energies are so destabilizing to us on the planet. So nature can help stabilize us. If you can get outside, especially with your bare feet on grass or on the dirt, or even lie down, it's going to help almost reset you. So being out in nature as much as possible, even being around animals, they will help calm your nervous system. And then there's prayer, meditation. That's an important component. Not staying away from news, because the news just engenders fear. It takes us into a low vibration, and it feeds that energy of fear and turmoil and worry. So staying away from the news, stay away from people that are negative or taking your vibration down, or people that only want to complain, or who are crusading, want to really, just emote about what's going on the planet and what's wrong. Instead, we can look at what's wrong, but focus on the world we want to create by being aware of what's happening, but focus on shining our light, because we are the change. We are creating the change. And if every person does their work and increases their light and their frequency and allows their light to expand, that's going to touch everyone, because we're all connected. It's going to help us get to the place we need to go faster.
It's the way our individual contribution can support the collective.
Absolutely. So those are some of the things that my guides have, said to me repeatedly.
What a beautiful conversation we've had today. I've loved it so much. Thank you for your openness in this space. What last piece of wisdom might you like to leave our listeners? And I kind of can imagine them circled between us, who have been leaning in, listening and receiving and having their perspectives opened and identifying some possibilities to do some of their own work from this conversation. So I feel like they're all right here. What would you like to share with them?
That you're going to be fine. You're going to be okay. Stay in your heart. Stay out of fear. Stay centered and calm. Focus on what you want to be in this world, who you want to be, how you want the world to look, and do your best.
Do your part, maybe.
Well, do your part is being true and authentic to yourself. It doesn't mean you have to be protesting or going out and writing letters, but you can do that if you want, as long as you're not devolving into a state of anger and fear, but you're focused on doing it for the reason of imagining the world that you want to create, putting out the positive energy. Being true and authentic to yourself, staying in your heart, staying centered.
What might happen if you were to do it from a place of anger or fear? Because I can hear some of the audience being a bit like, well, I am angry. They defunded kindergarten and I'm a teacher, for example.
Yeah. And you have every right to feel that way. So focus with meditation, prayer, on what you do want to create, and understand that this is part of a much bigger plan. There has to be some kind of deconstruction and de-evolution before the world is going to be created to where it's going for the highest good for everyone. And unfortunately, there's a lot of loss and pain in that process. So again, it goes back to, we have to trust. Yes, we can do what we can do, write the letters, but being in fear is a lower vibration. And it takes you into that place. It makes it harder for you to evolve. You've got to trust in that higher power, that this is all happening for a reason, that there is a magnificence, even despite the pain. There is a magnificence to this process, as ugly as it is in many areas, but we are not alone. There are so many star beings, so many ascended masters, so many light beings that are on this earth right now, helping us at this most momentous time in the history of the planet. And I know I've been upset with certain things that are happening as well, and my heart hurts. And I caught myself one morning crying over reading something in the news, which my guides don't want me to do, but I want to know what's going on. And I cried. I cried when I read that money was taken away from the food banks to buy food from the farmers. And food for me is an issue. It's integral to life. And I cried, and then I caught myself and said, well, those tears aren't doing any good for anybody. And you've got to pick yourself up, and you have to raise your vibration and send your light out and send the prayers out to everyone who's hungry, and send prayers out for change that's going to be positive, that we get through this period of darkness and bring in even more light, more light, more light to effectuate the change and have the earth be the way that we want it to be, and hold that vision.
I feel like there is a responsibility we have for our state, the work we need to do, the shadow work, the emotions that we're feeling. And we also have an opportunity to contribute to be the change we want to see.
Absolutely.
Yes. And the encouragement of what I'm hearing from your wisdom is to, as best you can, hold yourself in a space of neutrality or warm regard as it pertains to leading change. So using anger or those emotions that sit in that darker, heavier space, they aren't going to be as effective as if you were neutral or positive and leading that change.
Well, everything is frequency and vibration, and anger and fear are a lower level vibration. If anyone's read the book Power versus Force by David Hawking, he's a physicist, and he has a way of calculating the degree of consciousness and giving it a number. So the lowest degree of consciousness, the very lowest, most people would think would be anger or fear, but it's actually shame. And then guilt and anger and fear are a little bit above that. And the highest one is joy. It's not love. So if we want to really help change, we can't do it down here from fear and anger. It's got to be up here, not even from neutrality, but more of love. Love. And trust and faith, again, that we all signed up to be here at this incredible time in the history of this planet. And we're signed up here to be part of, it's a great evolutionary process. And yeah, it's not pretty. And there's a lot that's very painful through it. But on the other side of it, it's going to be wonderful. And we have to just trust that.
And we're not alone.
And we are never, ever alone.
For those who are thinking, well, yeah, but Robin, I am alone. I don't feel these beings. And I'm glad for you that you do, but I actually do feel very alone. What wisdom might you have or comfort could you offer?
Reach out to your community. Always, don't isolate, but reach out to friends and community and talk to your angels. Even if you don't think they hear you, talk to them. Tell them what you're looking for. Tell them what you want, what you need for healing. Again, they won't step through that door unless you open it first. They're always there.
So the invitation is to see your door and have
invite them in.
Invite them in.
Yeah. And then reach out. Reach out.
Beautiful. What a wonderful conversation we've had today. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
It's been such a joy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank Robin Cathleen Coale for joining me today on Wisdom Stripes. In today's episode, we explored her profound journey into shamanism and healing, the importance of spiritual wisdom, and the power of divine support through challenging times. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an update. You can connect with Robin and explore her work at sacredshamanichealing.com or read her blogs at robincathleencoale.com and shamanskitchen.org. To stay connected with me, follow at Meg Tuohey Official on Instagram. Thank you for listening to another episode of Wisdom Stripes. I hope you gained a little wisdom today. My name is Meg Tuohey, and this is Wisdom Stripes. Thank you for listening to this episode of Wisdom Stripes. Follow me on @MegTuoheyOfficial and leave a comment and review. I'm looking forward to meeting you here next time on Wisdom Stripes.